All right, Hangout on air is live. All right, go for it, Fallon.
Awesome. My name is Fallon. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I'm Riley, and
I'm Susan Luhow.
I'm Heather Farnsworth.
I'm Beth Hansen.
Awesome, ladies. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start with the questions.
who's doing some of this?
I've got it. So don't mind me if I don't just like focus on typing. I will forget everything. So I will be here and put in my 2 cents where I can, but I'm typing. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, so I'll start where it says Dr. George will discuss as many important topics. So each one of us had to choose one that we're personally interested in. So why did the government get involved in this issue? Does anybody want to start on that?
I'll start. So he actually talked really extensively about what I picked for my discussion board, and so I'm just going to continue with it because I thought it was interesting. But he talked about poverty kind of and like how the government deals with Social Security and like giving handouts and welfare and things like that, which was interesting to me. That he spat out a lot of awesome numbers for it, like how just I don't know. One really interesting one to me was like the top 15% of people pay like 90% of the taxes and things like that, and just how unfair the system is that we're like making the future pay for our current society instead of doing things to help the future people. So yeah, the government right now is very ineffective at what it's doing with welfare because it hasn't adjusted its system since the time of the New Deal.
I gotta agree with you, Riley. I pretty much chose the same thing, but I really like that he said that we should, we want to have large services paid by the state or by the government and not pay anything on it. So he was one phrase that I really like that he used is we used to borrow for the future to win, and now we actually borrow from the future instead of for the future. So I thought that was like, wow, it's super interesting that it's so true. And we're acting in a way that we're becoming dependent on everything. He said, spending, TV, internet, new phones. Everybody has new phones. Do you really need a new phone every single time one comes out? No, we're just becoming so dependent on everything, on material stuff, that, it gets to a point that we're just not doing anything effective, I guess, at some point.
Ellen, so what was your actual topic? Was it poverty too, or was it the welfare system, or?
It wasn't. No, mine it's completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, and he covers so many stuff, but I picked this. It didn't happen to be anything that I had picked before, but.
Gotcha.
Well, I picked something random. I just kind of picked something random. He was talking about how there's a lot of people having children out of wedlock, and and then specifically about like African Americans. So that's what I picked to kind of research. I don't know if that was like a huge part of his speech, but I thought it was interesting. I found like that African American families have the highest unemployment rates, and so that there's a lot of different grants and unemployment aid programs from the federal government to help them. And then also just how he talked about how there was just a large amount of children being born out of wedlock in African American populations and Hispanic populations, but also everyone, and how that kind of created a chain reaction that led to more problems in society, that led to more poverty and more need for people that are needing welfare. So it's just kind of, I don't really know, but it's just a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's awful that the family is so like far out. Like they don't Sorry, I said like 15 times just then. But the family just isn't important to people anymore. Marriage just isn't important to people anymore. But they don't understand the implications of single-parent families on the government or even on their society, and it's awful. You're right.
Let's see, Susan?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. I just kept, as he was talking, and he was talking about Social Security, and he was talking about retirement, and he was talking about all these things, and how pretty soon there's only going to be, what right now is there only 3 working people to every retired person, and pretty soon it's going to be even less than that. And I thought about all the things that we've been learning in all of our classes about the importance of family and about the importance of having children, and how people say, oh no, we're ruining the world and we have to, limit our population growth, but we're actually hurting ourselves by doing that. Pretty soon there's not going to be anybody working to support all these old people that are living for how long now because of modern medicine. And it's just interesting to me how it all boils down to the family, how it all keeps coming back to traditional families and family units in the way that the Lord has set them up, and having children and replenishing the earth, and how that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing to help keep all of this going forward. Another thing I was thinking about as he was talking was how much I don't know about government and how it works, and how I just feel like I can't complain about things anymore until I learn more about how all these things work and how complicated our government really is, and how grateful I am for that, the way that he described it, and all the safeguards that are in place to actually let us have stalemates and let us have these roadblocks that come up, because that's the way that we're able to save ourselves. I thought that was really interesting, and it just made me want to be more aware of what's really going on and how things really work.
Susan, I was with you. I thought that was super interesting, like the whole idea of how there's not going to be enough people to support anyone sooner than later.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, there's 10 kids in my family. Like when people say they have a big family and they talk about having 4 kids, I'm like, come again? Like, you're a small family. But then I have to remember, like, for me, a big family is going to be like 5 to 7 kids. And so I was thinking about how in one of my psychology classes, we talked about population control and how if everybody's only having 1 to 2 children, the world will run out of workers by like 2028. Sorry, Riley, I can't state it. I don't know the exact thing, so please don't enter for that. But I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about that class, and I just kept going over all these things. And it's amazing to me because in that same class we talked about the orphanages in like Ethiopia and all these places where there's all of these children that tax money is going to as well, but they can't work for themselves. So I was thinking how it's not just the old we're paying for, but also with how we talked about poverty and aid, it's the young we're paying for too, because their parents, like the middle class, isn't learning how to work for themselves. And we do rely on everything. So I had a whirlwind of stuff going on here. Well, yeah, because this and this and this, and it was like a little connect the dot with the stars. But I thought that it was just, we aren't just paying for the old people to live anymore, because there's going to be a lot of them, and we are paying for the young, the people born out of wedlock. Like, those systems aren't free. We pay for those. And so that was something that it just like caught my attention, that how important, like Susan said, how important it is that we're having children so that we can even sustain another generation, because if we don't have kids, well, nobody else is. So it's like, I can't go have 14 kids. I'm sorry. I love the plan, but 14 children for me, I mentally would struggle, and I struggle sometimes with 1. So I'm going to go from 1 to 2, and I might have twins, but like hopefully 1 to 2, And I was just thinking about how important that it was, like in my role as a mom, how important it is that I make the decision to have kids with my husband, and that I raise my children to know how to work hard, and that I raise my children to know that government aid, if it's there, I think I wrote on somebody's post, like right now I have to have Medicaid for my son because I can't afford health insurance for him. And it's in the stage of life right now where I'm at, I have to use government aid or else I will be in debt and debt and debt. And I've talked to bishops and stake presidents about this, and they don't want us to go into debt right now if we don't have to. But we're also, both my husband and I are going to school, and we're working towards being able to support society and support our family. And so it's one of those things where we're not trying to live off the system because it's fun. You know, we're living off it because we really need it. But how a lot of people get in when they need it and then they never leave. And that's where society kind of starts to break down. And it really does destroy families. Like, I've seen some families that they're on unemployment benefits and then the dad just decides it's easier and then he never goes back to work and the parents end up divorced and the families break apart. Like, it's really sad how it happens because they make it easy to get into the system, but they make it really easy to stay in the system too. And so that's, I don't know, I was just thinking about that. And I mean, I don't know a lot about Social Security and retirement. That's something that still goes way over my head. But I just, like, they're putting too much on making it right, so we think that we won't have to deal with it when we're older.
So 2 points off of that. Just like, when are Mormons gonna take over the world? Because we're the only people having children. In Mormon, there's gonna be some social revolution, I swear. Because really, the people who don't believe in God just aren't having kids. They're having, or maybe they're having one child, and there's two. It takes 2 people to have one child. So you're obviously not replenishing the population. You know, just wondering if that's gonna happen. And also with that, Beth, I commented on it. We need the system right now, but really they make it so that you need to have the system. There's no way to not. Even if you're working, you're paying so much in taxes that if you didn't have to pay that, if Obamacare didn't rise the insurance prices so much that we couldn't afford it ourselves, we could be independent. We could pay for it by ourselves. But because we have to pay so much in taxes to support the systems, we need the systems. And so it's just interesting how they're almost making it so that it's impossible to live without being dependent on welfare. It's almost like they're trying to make us dependent on welfare. It's interesting.
Or that it's
Right,
so
so they can always justify it on however more they want to increase taxes and things like that. You're right. So actually, we cover a lot of the questions already. You know, if it has been effective, if there have been any results or things like that. Now, just jumping into the next one. It says, according to Dr. Will, one thing you can do for your country is reserve a spacious portion of your life for which your country is not responsible. So, do you agree with Dr. Will? And I'm going to go for the other question too. In what areas do you personally feel the government should be involved and should not be involved in addressing your chosen threat to children and families?
I guess for me, I don't understand, and this is just, I mean, as I read this, like, I don't think the wording works for me. Like, I just need this explained to me what he's even
saying by that.
Yes, I don't understand in which your country is not responsible. I mean, is that saying, like, what individually can I do that is, like, me on an individual level where the government has nothing to do with it?
I think what he's saying is basically that you should have a big portion of your life. Like, if you do need to have government assistance, the majority of the things, anything that you can pay for yourself, you should. Anything that you don't need the government for, you shouldn't be using the government for. Like, if you're gonna get an iPhone or if you're gonna live in luxury, don't make the government pay for your luxury. Pay for it for yourself. I think that's
right. Which is why he was saying that a lot of people are abusing the system, because, like you said, they may need it, but then for that little extra they get, they use it on things they don't need.
Yeah. I really liked his philosophy, like comparing it to the mindset of people when, like, they made the Constitution, like how they were trying to use the government just as a protection, like all the checks and balances, and not as a source of, like, help. I don't know, just that philosophy of being free and only having the government to prevent more influence.
I thought the same
Does that
thing.
make sense? I don't know. I'm not speaking very well, but
I thought the same thing, Heather. And the first thing that popped into my head when I read that question and when he said that was self-reliance. That's what it came down to for me, was each family being individually responsible for their own self and their own needs and their own futures.
Right. Um, and in what areas do you personally feel the government should be involved and should not be involved in addressing your chosen threat to children and families? I guess I will go. Mine, it's about actually um, traditions and things that actually keep a family stronger. I think that the government, or they're actually seeing the need for families to be stronger, and so they actually come with a lot of commercials when it comes to spending time with family, and one that it gets my attention, and this is not the government, but during the holidays, how they actually have the gatherings, like Coca-Cola has, like, share with your family this and this and this. They're actually coming to the realization that we really need our families to be stronger, to have the support that we need to definitely support each other when there's problems going on. And I just think that as we develop better traditions, as we develop good norms in our families, the stronger we will be. And so definitely when there's programs for parents to learn how to be more effective parents, and I mean, I've seen how in schools they offer things like that, and I think that's a good involvement, I would say. So, anybody else?
I don't know. I don't know if any real involvement is good involvement. I don't. And here's where I hesitate to say that, because we need the involvement at this point because of how deteriorated our moral society has become. But I don't think the purpose of the government should be to be involved in those kinds of programs. They should be run by like individual nonprofit organizations. The government should have nothing to do with it. And the reason I think that is because when the government gets their hands into things, there are so many legal ramifications, and there are so many things that happen that don't support the family, and it gets messy when the government messes in. If the government puts its hands in anything, it gets messy. And really, that's not its purpose. It's not what it's here for. It's not to be the helping hand that guides us along. And it shouldn't be involved in family matters, because then it can define what is right and what is wrong for your own children. And that bothers me.
That's
and
true.
So I think what the government's purpose should be is to regulate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that is it. And I really don't believe that the government should be involved as much as it is. I feel like advocates should be, in a perfect world, advocating through private organizations and things like that, but the government should get its hands out of everything. It's too messy, it's too expensive, and it's not helping.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know, I'm trying to answer that question. So the issue that I picked for my discussion board was about single parent families in the US, or more like single mother families as a population group. And so I've been trying to think of like what the government should be involved in. And I'm really not sure, because I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of things that should be private organizations, but then there's also a huge need. Like protecting their rights, protecting them from other things that could go wrong. I don't know. So I feel like that's a hard question.
I was thinking of it as my threat that I chose, like, at the beginning of the class.
I was too.
My threat to
okay.
families, and my thing was about marriages, and I totally agree with Riley. I think that the government needs to get their hands out of it. I don't like that they redefined marriage. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous to me, and it's totally going against everything that Heavenly Father, put together for us. Anyway, yes.
So we kind of agree less involvement is best.
Less involvement, yes.
Less is possible.
Okay, I should probably say
Yes.
something really quick. Hold on. Okay, so my topic was kind of like in the hot seat right now, and I chose like homeschool education versus public education, and in the socialization of children because half of my family homeschools and half of them don't, and so it's kind of something that I've been really interested in, and I've had a huge issue with the government getting too involved in education lately. And I mean, we talked about this with the Common Core. We talked about this with a lot of other principles where you can see their good intentions, but there's too much that we still don't know. Like they're commandeering the whole system without letting the people know. And so I'm definitely in agreement. I think that there is many positives of having a government, and I think so long as it's a righteous government, fine, take a little bit of a stand into other issues, but where ours, I don't feel like it is a very racist government. I think that they need to realize that they're not that great and they need to back up off of it. And I think they just, like, I think there are good people in government and a lot of good programs that come. Fallon, I definitely agree with you that there are some things that they're realizing that they've made a mistake in some things. They're making a push toward, okay, what you really do need families. And I thought that that was funny that you brought up the Coca-Cola one because people see the Coca-Cola commercials and they dream about having that type of a family. And it's the kind of family that, I mean, it's that nuclear family, that strong family. They want it and they don't achieve. Government has taken us so far away from that. And so I think that the government does, they attempt to fix things, you know, and they are trying to bring us back into no matter what kind of family the government sees it, you know. And I do think that there is a need for systems like Heather said. I mean, that's really important. Single moms, I can't even imagine. Like, I know how hard it is for me to have my husband gone for 3 weeks at a time. I can't imagine him just being gone, like not existent. I would struggle with that. And I think that those programs allow for moms to be mothers, and that's great. And then this goes back to, you know, how I was talking about homeschooling. And I think that they're trying to regulate too much, and I think Riley talked about this too, and I think Susan talked about it too. But anyways, how they're just trying to take too much control over something that they should have any dictation over. Like, they give us the national test, and I think that it's like, yes, it's our responsibility to help kids pass the test, is great. But if my education system is better than yours and my kids can pass that test when they're 12, I think that that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, and that's something that I know in a couple of states they've been trying to like outlaw homeschool. Like, there's been movements to outlaw homeschool because people don't like that it's not like regulated by the government because they feel like that's safer, and for me, I feel the opposite. I feel like when the government gets a hold of something, there's too much liability and there's too much freedom that all of a sudden was mine and is now gone. And as a mom, that's scary because I don't want my kids to be the average Joe, and I know that they are smart, and I want them to be able to excel. And so that's something, when the government starts taking away freedoms that aren't theirs to take away, that's when I worry and worried.
That reminds me of what he was
Awesome.
talking. Sorry, that reminds me of what he was talking about with the Declaration of Independence and how it's meant to secure our rights and freedoms, and it's not for the government to tell us what our rights, not to offer us some rights, but it's to secure the rights that are ours to begin with.
Yeah.
Sorry, Riley, go ahead.
Oh no, it's just Matt Walsh, we talked about him a couple weeks ago. I think it might have been last week or the week before. But he did an article about this family that emigrated from Germany because in Germany it is illegal to homeschool your children because they are socialists, and so they want everyone to believe and think the same way. And that's kind of what America is moving towards because of Obama and the liberal mindset that we all need to accept and believe things. But with that comes things like mandatory sexual education where your child can't be opted out, things like that. That if we don't have the option to homeschool, I feel like that is where our world is going to, where we have no control over what the government thinks is best for our children, even though they might believe differently than us. They're taking away our rights as parents, and that's scary.
Yeah.
It's true. All right, I think we've covered all the questions. And Beth, I don't know if you want to add anything to it, but you just went over pretty much everything we said. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if you
I
have
can
any
just, as the
added notes in there.
summary or added notes.
Just
Like,
You
do the
don't have to
summary
go
right now?
because you just went over everything
Okay.
we said. But if there's anything missing, let us know.
No, I don't know. I think that this, just looking over the notes, everything evolves around everything else. Like we talked about self-reliance, which brought us back to the welfare system. So as a summary, since I have to say, okay, this is our summary to the teacher, because she always reads the summary part. It's the only
Go
part she
for it.
really pays attention.
Oh.
So I guess she only like nitpicks throughout it, and then she actually listens to the summary. So as the summary, we just talked about how, like in the beginning, how like their services for the state are free and how that's great. It's beneficial for those who need it, but it's too easy to stay in the system. And because it's too easy to stay, the people aren't learning to work. There's not enough people in the workforce, Susan said, and we can't pay for the old and we can't pay for the young who are being brought into the system, like Heather said, with children out of wedlock. And it's a difficult thing. And Riley brought up that when are the Mormons going to take over? Because, well, we're the only ones popping out babies.
Except the Mennonites. And, okay, anyway, keep going.
Like
Like there's others.
But we'll have some others too. But so, and we talked about, has it been effective? What have been the results? And then we just talked about how it's been really hard because I think it was Sue who brought up that we were working for the future, and now we were taking for the future, and now we're taking from the future, and that's a scary thing. Like that's hard because we do have, we want to have kids, or eventually we'll have kids, and we're destroying their future for them. So then we also talked about Dr. Will's thing about one of the things that you can do for your country is the reverse spacious portion of your life for which the country is not responsible. And we just talked about how, like each of our things, for Fallon it was traditions. Riley about how the government should not be able to get their hands into issues because it gets messy. Susan agreed. And for Heather, she talked about single mother families and how there's a lot of things that private organizations should be involved in, but there's a huge need, so the government has to get involved. And overall, basically, I think what we decided is when the government starts commandeering, that's when there's a problem, and we're at the point where there's a problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Beth. Do you want to go ahead and stop the recording?
Yep. See y'all next week.
All right, just stop the recording.